We all know that the Brotherhood of Steel is one of the most badass factions in all of Fallout, if not the most badass faction. But what do we know about the individuals that comprise the Brotherhood? We'll be answering that question today by asking ourselves, can you beat Fallout 4 as Knight Titus? We'll be playing on very hard difficulty with no companions allowed. As Knight Titus, I'm allowed to only wear T60 power armor in combat, I'm allowed to use vertibird miniguns like in the TV show, I'm also allowed to use my bare fists, and I have a 5.56 assault rifle kitted exactly like in the TV show, which, by the way, I won't be able to upgrade due to an insane level requirement. After spending way too much time in the character creator making the bodily proportions the only thing possible for a giga chat such as Titus, I just say fuck it after a while. We'll rarely see his face anyways with all that power armor hiding it and all. I sit through the intro, say hello to the Voltec rep, assign my perk points in a, with retrospect, terrible configuration, we'll get to that, and watch as the local festival's pyrotechnics get way too ambitious, causing us to enter the vault a few years earlier than the bombs actually went off. After a dozen or so years of role-playing as a popsicle, my wife gets murdered and my baby gets baby-napped. I make my way through the vault beating rat roaches with a stick because I didn't feel like ringing around a Rosie with a bunch of roaches, though I did leave the guns behind. After acquiring the Pip-Boy, I'm able to equip my bare fists and open the vault door. After looting Sanctuary, I get distracted by an APC in the water where after fighting some oversized insects take my first perk into Scrounger in the hope to find the specific ammo type that I want. I returned to Sanctuary, made my way to the Red Rocket truck stop, and on the way I looked to my left randomly and spotted a totally legitimately spawned Brotherhood of Steel gear set, which includes the rustiest T60 suit of power armor you'll ever see, a Brotherhood of Steel uniform, and a Fallout TV show assault rifle whose ammo doesn't spawn until you reach a very high level. Which means Scrounger probably wasn't the best perk to have chosen, and then my lack of charisma points is going to majorly screw me over, since I have to buy all of my ammo at outrageous prices, while selling things will end up with me getting ripped off harder than an irradiated bear ripping out my giblets. With this lack of renewable ammunition, I'll have to be very careful with when I decide to shoot, so the first thing I do is beat the snot out of a few mole rats and overgrown mosquitoes. After arriving in Concord, I take the liberty to shoot a few raiders where the quest reward gives me the few XP points I needed to level up, where I pick the Pain Train perk so I can run into enemies with my power armor, dealing a little bit of damage and slightly staggering them. Every little bit helps, I suppose. After abandoning Preston and Co to not hear about the incessant whining about settlements needing help, I make my way over to Drumlin Diner where I demonstrate to Wolfgang and Simone why it's not the smartest choice to attack an absolute gigachat in power armor while all you have is some crummy little pie pistols. Here I sell some stuff, but there's no 5.56 ammo in sight. While making my way over to Good Neighbor to find some ammo shops, I come across a retirement home where I take a perk point into lockpicking, which allows me to get my grubby little hands on some meds and a fusion core. I also found a Tales of a Junktown Jerky vendor magazine, which gives me tiny bonuses to my trading skill, but by Jesus am I gonna need every cap I can get. While continuing on my merry way, I heard some gunshots and just couldn't help but investigate, until I see this. As I continue on, I stumble across Bunker Hill where I proceed to scream directly into Kessler's ear about how I cannot hear her. I also take a nice look at their market, but there's still no 5.56 ammo anywhere in sight. Moving on, I mark the Old North Church on my map for later use, where I pick my next perk point, choosing Commando, resulting in me dealing 20% more damage with my machine gun, which is very nice indeed. Because Good Neighbor doesn't show up on your map, I started running around like a chicken without a head, finding Boston Common, dodging raiders, critters and super mutants alike. When I finally found Good Neighbor, I had very little patience for Finn trying to extort me, the power armor guy. So I did the only sensible thing and made his head disappear.
It's gone.
Which got Hancock real hard for me. After that, I immediately brought my very muscular ass to the nearest shop and saw that Cleo sold some 5.56 ammo, so I thought that my ammo problems were over. Hooray! But at what cost to my sanity later? With the knowledge that acquiring more ammo would be a piece of cake, I accepted the nearest contract killing job I could find and started getting very liberal with my ammunition usage, stealing everything that wasn't bolted down, to subsequently sell it for more ammunition. But this is where I run into a major problem. Every 2 days the vendors reset their inventory and only very rarely sell a little bit of 5.56 ammo, resulting in me getting bored and pummeling the rest of the quest triggermen with my bare power-armored fists. After looting and selling everything they had, I returned to Sanctuary to polish off the rust off of my Brotherhood of Steel issue power armor, so that I can look the part now as well. After this I returned to Good Neighbor to stock up on more ammunition, complete my quest with Charlie and level up, putting another perk point into Scrounger, cause if your ammo type doesn't spawn, surely having more of that ammo spawn in will magically make your ammo type spawn in now, right? Wrong! Having to live with this poor decision, I made my way up to Diamond City pretty uneventfully, except for me taking out some super mutants merely because I felt like it. Arriving at the front gate, I sat through Piper doing a little routine with the intercoms and made my way over to the nearest shops in search for more ammunition. Lo and behold, I come up empty-handed once more and decided that surely I can take these 136 bullets and just mosey my way on over to Vault 114 to rescue my detective, right? So I made it about a third of the way in before having to resort to fisting the enemy triggerman to death again. Though, to be fair, the first third had the highest concentration of them and the longest range, which would have been pretty nasty had I immediately gone in to melee him to death. Fisting my way through the vault, I freed Nick and put a perk into steady aim to improve hipfire on my gun, since the scope is for medium range and the hipfire is for very short range, making the most common range, the regular short range, pretty ammo inefficient. When we made it to the vault exit, Skinny was feeling uncooperative. And, well, I think Titus described my feelings perfectly.
You're fat, you're ugly, and it's time you and your crazy bitch said goodbye.
With me missing most of my shots because Skinny bolted it to the left, it meant it's fisting time. After leaving the vault, I discussed the curious case of my missing son with Nick, after which we went to Kellogg the kidnapper's house, for which we needed the key. I tried to bargain and pickpocket to get the key, but I couldn't succeed, which means I used the stealth boy to get the key, and everything else from the receptionist's desk purely out of spite, because I refuse to give these bums my money. I need it, you know. On my way back to Kellogg's house, I came across a bum whom I gave a soda pop, which leveled me up, allowing me to increase my fisticuffs damage by 20%. After ransacking Kellogg's house, I got my dog to get a good old whiff cigar, which allowed him to track Kellogg for me. But before any of that, I first sat through another half hour of store resetting for bullets, after which I needed some more money, so I busted the drug deal and stole the merchandise for myself, which would allow me to buy a bunch more bullets for the foreseeable future. With enough drug money to last me for a while, I started following my dog and came eye to eye with a 2-ton mutated bear. Seeing how going mano a mano with my fists wasn't working, I made a tactical retreat, pulled out my gun and started unloading, because Titus is a calm and collected person, because Titus knows no fear, Titus knows no pain. It would have been quick and easy enough if a bunch of raiders hadn't also decided that they wanted to have a go at me at the same time. Here I almost died, but not quite yet. Arriving at Fort Hagen, I leveled up and put another perk point into Unarmed for yet another 20% extra punching damage. Arriving inside Fort Hagen, I effortlessly dispatched of many Institute synths and even got a Protectron to get a bunch of kills. Way to go, little lad. After a while though, I started to run low on ammunition. Again. So, punching it is. I didn't put those perk points in for nothing, you know. When I reached the room with the big man himself, I realized that I had yet to help the Brotherhood at the police station, so I turned that ass around and ran as fast as my mechanical legs could out of the building. Because waiting for more bullets was starting to get incredibly tedious, I did a Google search which resulted in me finding my sole 5.56 vendor for the rest of the game to the northwest of Fairlane Hill Estates. Every 2 days she sold me 300 to 400 bullets, which was so much more than the average of 40 bullets I got every 2 days from visiting 4 separate shops combined. Now my new problem was cash, since it cost me about 6 caps per bullet. But for now I had plenty of ammunition to deal with the coming quest, so off to Cambridge Police Station I went. Once there I killed a few ghouls and Dance didn't recognize my Brotherhood paint job and addressed me as civilian. What an insult!
We appreciate the assistance, civilian, but what's your business here?
Pest exterminator. I heard you had a feral problem.
Nevertheless, I agreed to help him get a transmitter and off we went. After I put another point into assault rifles for more damage and better hip fire. Alright. Once inside the building we encountered whole hordes of synths, but luckily Paladin Dance was somewhat of a gigachat himself, and if I wasn't hungry for some action, he would have easily been able to take care of this whole segment all on his own. Slowly making our way through the building, I made sure to loot as much of the Institute's weapons as possible, to get a heap of fusion cell ammo and lots of Institute weapons to both sell for even more 5.56 ammo. Then we reached the thruster room and oh no, Dance is ambushed. If only there was some way to help. If only there was some button I could push to help him out. So, after Dance created a nice pile of lootables for me, I could finally be fucked to press that button and whipped up a nice crispy bit of premium long pork. After Dance miraculously survived, we retrieved the transmitter from a gaggle of synths who got their filthy little mitts on it right before we did and headed outside, where I was officially taken in by this chapter of the Brotherhood and put a perk point into gun nut. After restocking on ammo, again, it was time to confront Kellogg. I bet he thought his tough guy act got me to run away, but nope, now he's gon' get it. Even though I had plenty of ammo, I really just wanted to whoop him with my bare hands, covered with power armor. I first offed his automatons before uppercutting him so goddamn hard that his head just went pop. I guess there were some salvageable bits of brain matter lying on the floor because I scooped some up for later use. We also found out that our boy is supposedly now residing inside the Institute, so we're gonna have to find out where this Institute is located. When going outside, I saw that the reinforcements have arrived in a giant blimp. I proceeded to get on said blimp, turned off my brain as Elder Maxton delivered his speech for the so manyth time, said hello to the crew and jumped on a vertebrate to kick some super muty ass. I first proceeded to gun down the behemoth with the vertebrate's minigun. When I hit the ground there were still some super mutants left, including a legendary butcher. But I pressed on and domed the last super mutant with the last bullet in my mag. Very satisfying like. Inside the building I had the pleasure of there being plenty more super mutants for me to let forever sleep. The basic super mutants go down easily enough, but it's the special variants that really soak up my expensive bullets. I put a perk into science, which will become very important later, and made my way to the downstairs level. Arriving downstairs, there was one super mutant with a rocket launcher, who managed to get a few hits on me due to me having terrible aim and the gun kicking like a mule, which blasted me to an inch of my health. After I took care of all the squishy little mutants and their dogs, there was one legendary butcher left. Again, just like outside, who I eventually managed to take down with a lot of punches being thrown his way before finally gunning him down. After that, thanks to this loading screen, I came to the genius realization that I could set up a water trading empire to feed my constant need for buying expensive AF bullets. So I went to work. Luckily, with all the stuff I'd been hoarding, my level 1 in science and the plentiful supplies in sanctuary, I managed to set up 8 industrial water purifiers, which resulted in about 240 canisters of purified water every few days, for me to sell for 7 caps per piece, paying for about 2/3 of my ammunition since one bullet is 6 caps and I buy about 300 to 400 of them. What a horrible deal! I really am being taken for a ride. After this, I went to Nick to follow up on Kellogg the Kidnapper, where he came up with the genius idea to scoop a part of Kellogg's brain out and analyze it in the memory den, where you can relive past memories. Luckily, I already had some, for some reason. I also leveled up and put a second point into Gun Nut. But before I went to the memory den, I thought this would be the perfect time to pay a certain group of disgusting hippies a visit. I'd like to say they fought hard, but then I'd be lying. There was only one of them that was even remotely able to put up a fight, and that was Glory with her minigun. After all was said and done, I tipped my Halo helmet to them, and to add insult to injury, also stripped them butt-ass naked to show my complete and utter disdain for them. After that, I proceeded to massacre their HQ. Dr. Carrington was the first to bite the dust, followed by two random agents who weren't even able to leave their beds before I gunned them down like dogs. And last but not least, I killed off Tinker Twat, who brought me great pleasure in killing because I really don't like the insane motherfucker. With the satisfaction of a job well done, I went to the Museum of Freedom, where Preston and co have been camping out for literal months now, facing off against those raiders. Honestly, I gotta say I'm pretty shocked they haven't all starved to death a while ago at this point. The poor basic level 1 raiders really didn't stand much of a chance, but hey, it sure was satisfying to off them either way. When I got to Preston, they were pretty shocked that I was already wearing power armor, which gave me a pretty funny response.
I had a whole fancy plan about fixing up a suit of power armor, and here you are, walking in like some kind of metal miracle.
And Sturgis, I don't think that's how you're supposed to operate the terminal. Once outside, I proceeded to jump off the roof like a maniac and went to town on those raiders. Their leader Gristle lost his head during the fighting, among others. But then the Deathclaw emerged, and as I proceeded to unload on it, I was forced to, just like with the bear, make a tactical retreat into the loving arms of my Brotherhood comrades, who I totally knew were there, who brought a Gatling laser with them. So jealous. As the Deathclaw fell before me, the background lit up like a Michael Bay movie, making me feel really good about life in general. After this, I ran to Sanctuary, completed the quest, and took the Bloody Mess perk for an extra 5% damage. The next day, I went to the memory den and sprinted through the most boring portion of Fallout 4's base game. Don't even get me started on the Far Harbor puzzle. If I ever go there, I will use console commands, and I don't give a damn what you have to say. If you think less of me as a person because of that somehow, then so be it. Because of the brain exploration, we now know that the Institute, which supposedly has our boy, uses teleportation to get in and out, and that one of their scientists, Virgil, went rogue and is now hiding in the glowing sea. Dr. Amari is puzzled as to why Virgil would possibly be wanting to hide out in the glowing sea, since it's too dangerous to hide there even if desperate. When I point out that that's exactly why he's hiding there, since it's too dangerous to follow him, she's like, oh my god, that must be it. Yeah, no shit, that's why I say, yeah, freaking moron. With my next destination set, it's time to stock up on ammunition once more. And this time, I have a boatload of water to play around with. So I make my way over to my friendly neighborhood 556 dealer and eliminate a few bears there, no problem. Because we all know that Titus will scoff at such pitifully weak creatures. As long as he has his gun in hand, nothing bad will happen to him. From my dealer's home, I set a direct course for the glowing sea and stumbled upon a proximity-activated sentry bot. I tried to shoot off its arms, but with me not being able to upgrade my weapon, it wasn't very effective. By the time I shot off one of its arms, it was already half dead. After that, I just sprayed him down on center mass and got my hands on a few extra fusion cores. Nice. Continuing on my journey, I also encountered a crazy lady. Not too far removed from the sentry bot, who claimed she was a synth. So I purged her, as was standard Brotherhood doctrine, though I didn't find a synth component. Like I said, crazy. Once I arrived in the glowing sea, I suffered my first and only death by the claws of a legendary rat scorpion of all things. It wasn't even a special rat scorpion or anything, but for some reason, unlike normal rat scorpions, it just did dumb amounts of what I can only assume was poison damage. Attempt number 2 and I got some sweet payback with it not being a legendary this time around and with it almost being unable to even scratch me. I also had my filthy way with a pack of feral ghouls who I cut down like wheat merely for sporting fun. One of them even exploded into blood confetti. It was glorious. The pack also included a legendary ghoul who, just like all the other legendary enemies in this run, dropped me nothing of value, which was big sad. This little escapade also leveled me up, so I put another point into the Bloody Mess perk for another 5% extra damage. When I finally arrived at Virgil's cave, I went mano a mano with a Deathclaw in its natural habitat, its claws unable to pierce my armor. I didn't even break a sweat, or my gun. After conversing with Virgil, he sent me out to scoop a specific part out of a super synth's head because plot reasons. While in the glowing sea, I marked the Sentinel site on my map for future fast travel, traded Mama Murphy's life for some glorious XP points and headed towards Green Tech Genetics. Inside, the place was infested with gunners who are a wannabe private military corporation group. But because they don't really wear armor, they were easily taken care of. Eventually though, we got to the section. The section where there's this
nigga with a rocket launcher
who has ended many a player's life. What didn't help matters was a mine, my dog-shaped aim, and a really inconveniently placed railing. But I still lived. Arriving at the top floor, I told the super synth that they got to die, and went full LA on them, pumping myself full of Jet and Psycho. Poor lad didn't stand a chance. Anyway, I snagged a chip out of his head, interacted with one prisoner who didn't have manners, one prisoner who did have manners, and freed the prisoner from behind the door. Though they foolishly revealed themselves to be a synth, which ended in their immediate execution. Immediately after this, I went to the ex-Railroad HQ, stepped over Tinker Twat's corpse and decoded the Corsa chip, after which I returned to Virgil who gave me the teleporter schematics, after which I went to the Brotherhood to build the damn thing. When we fired up the teleporter, we also had a radiation storm roll in on us, giving us the perfect backdrop for science gone too far. It's alive! It's alive! Arriving in the Institute, I put a second point into science and downloaded a bunch of data from the Institute mainframe. After the Institute subjected me to a fucked up experiment with my fake kit, I wasn't feeling very cooperative anymore and promptly offed the twat responsible and ran out of the Institute, destroying a few synths in the process. Getting to the teleporter room, a few more synths tried to block my ultimate escape and were taken care of immediately. I ran into the teleporter and returned to Elder Maxon, all of this in about 15 minutes after I left, which must have been really surprising to him for sure. He was also kinda pissed that I fucked the mission so goddamn hard, but I didn't care, because I killed off that dickhead Institute leader for the glory of the Brotherhood, and my own morbid satisfaction. To fight the Institute, the Brotherhood wanted to repair Liberty Prime, who was a giant fuck-off robot, for which I had to go fetch a scientist, since the scientist they actually wanted is now kinda stuck in the Institute. Whoops, no regrets though. After fetching her, I had to build some limb actuators, which was easy enough since I already had all the supplies I needed. The next step to getting him online, however, was yet another fetch quest, but this time we were going to get some nukes for Prime to yeet at our enemies, which were located at that Sentinel site which we strolled over to before. Once inside, I mowed down a few ghoul hordes, very satisfying like, just a complete mech dump. It was glorious. Continuing on, I encountered some kind of religious kook whom I repeatedly threatened, which didn't really go well with him for some reason. Although the guy himself went down like a paper bag in the rain, his assault run was a different story, beating me to an inch of my life and getting real spooky with its eye laser. Nevertheless, they didn't stop me and the nukes were secured, also securing me a level up where I chose Medic to heal more effectively. The next quest was Blind Betrayal, where it turns out that Dance was a filthy synth all along, and we were tasked with hunting him down. Knowing that your friend, mentor and sponsor can betray you like this left a permanent impression on poor Titus. He never again made the effort to really get to know someone, let alone risk his life for them, cause you never know what monsters they might turn out to be, leaving you to die. Nevertheless, a few minutes later, dance was history. Somehow still talking after his head and his vocal cords exploded. Reporting back to Elder Maxon, he had me promoted to Paladin, which I accepted, for the time being at least. But the next order of business was the elimination of the Railroad Hippies leadership, which I gleefully accepted, even though I was kinda confused because I had already done that. But hey, I won't say no to killing some grunts from the same organization. So I go to town on those fools busting heads left, right and center. But when I reached the catacombs I accidentally love-tapped a Brotherhood soldier, but I proceeded to mow down a few more hippies, filling me with great satisfaction again. After all was said and done, I blew open the wall towards the hippies HQ, trampled over the stripped down corpses of my enemies, reprogrammed Pam and called this a mission accomplished. With the complete destruction of the hippies, it was time to get at the final part to get Liberty Prime back online, a beryllium agitator. So I jumped into the nearest vertebrate, made my way to the mass fusion building and unloaded my hot lead all over the sins occupying the roof. For some reason there were explosive canisters just littered everywhere, which sure came in handy with having them all explode on me. When we landed, we mopped up the few remaining sins and made our way through the elevator shaft, cutting down sins left and right as they teleported in to try and stop us from getting that agitator. At least until they blew up the elevator, making it drop a few meters. I don't mean to tell them how to do their job, but you know, had they just blown it a little earlier, someone not wearing power armor maybe could have died from falling. But as it stands, it was just kinda useless. Oh well. When we made our way to the lower levels on foot, we retrieved the beryllium agitator, but this tripped the automated defense systems, first sending a sentry bot at us, which was dispatched easily enough. Secondly, a singular protectron, what should we do? And finally, and most dangerously, two assaultrons who were luckily focused on Ingram, so that I could shoot one dead in the back while the other one charged at me, drilling me with its hands and finally activating its spoopy eye laser, which I somehow managed to dodge with some expert maneuvering. After this I helped out some Brotherhood soldiers by punching the hell out of some synths, since ammunition was once again running a tad low. At this point in the playthrough my damage output has decreased significantly, because while my enemies have been getting stronger, my damage output has remained more or less the same because I can't upgrade my gun. Nevertheless, I made it to Liberty Prime, powered him up, and bared witness to his majesty. After a rather uneventful escort mission, watching our glorious killing machine have its filthy way with a bunch of super mutants and synths, he drilled a giant hole in the Institute with its eye laser before tossing a nuke in there for good measure. Due to this hole, we penetrated the Institute from the top with plenty of Brotherhood soldiers in tow. Back inside the Institute, Elder Maxon gave me a pulse charge, which I had to attach to the Institute's main reactor to make it all go boom. After fighting our way through the old robotics part of the Institute, where the old sentry bot for some reason didn't wake up on us, we made our way to Bioscience, where nothing stood in our way. In their desperation, they let loose their two fake guerrillas of war, a decadence project, which were easily put down. When we got to the main lobby, me and my comrades in arms had no problem shooting all the synths and defenseless scientists that were running around out there. But to access the reactor room, I had to access the director's terminal. Arriving in the director's room, I noticed that the now ex-director had ascended to a higher plane of existence and was asserting dominance at us from beyond the grave. I for one didn't care for it, so I pulled him back down to the plane of mortals, accessed his terminal, opened the door to the reactor and inhaled all the drugs to slowly, methodically and gleefully massacre everything inside that reactor room with accuracy never before seen in this playthrough, thanks to a hefty dose of jet. After me and Elder Maxon massacred everything inside the room, I opened the reactor door and planted the pulse charge, all without shutting down the reactor, cause a few rats never killed anybody.
You're not
Having
sure.
rigged the reactor to explode, I said goodbye to my abomination of a robot son, teleported out of the Institute, and slowly reveled in the moment where I got to push the big red button, making the Institute go bye-bye. With the Institute exploding, I've beaten the game, and I've shown that you can indeed most definitely beat Fallout 4 as Knight Titus. After the War of the Institute, Paladin Titus from Vault 111 was promoted to Sentinel in recognition for his stellar efforts in the Commonwealth campaign. Yet he refused and requested to be demoted to Knight to keep serving in the field so he doesn't have to deal with the political side of the Brotherhood. What time will bring for Titus is not yet known, but it's safe to say that he will have a fruitful life ahead of him, putting humanity before himself and others, and that he'll go towards a dignified end, gun in hand, staring death in the face unwaveringly. This concludes the story of one of the Brotherhood's greatest heroes. For now.